The stars of the Andromeda sector sparkled like diamonds against the black canvas of space. Among them, the massive space station of GalacticPrime floated silently, a marvel of alien engineering. This was where the galaxy's most important rulers, explorers, and traders met for the Intergalactic Summit, a gathering meant to promote peace, trade, and prestige. Humans were still considered new and untested, often underestimated by the older alien civilizations. Captain Ethan Hayes was one of the few humans invited. His reputation had grown from daring missions and acts of clever diplomacy. He was practical, brave, and stubbornly optimistic, a combination that alien officials found confusing. As he navigated the station's glowing corridors, his mind buzzed with anticipation and curiosity. He had seen many wonders in his life, but nothing quite like the vast alien cultures converging here. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the station, in the imperial palace of the Zetherian Empire, Princess Lyria sat in silence, her long silver hair falling over her shoulders like a river of moonlight. She was considered one of the Empire's most beautiful and graceful members, yet a shadow hung over her life. Lyria was infertile, a fact her family refused to acknowledge publicly, fearing shame and gossip among the powerful elite. The court whispered and laughed behind closed doors, inventing cruel jokes about her condition. This time they had devised a plan they believed would be funny: gift Lyria to a human. He is strong, kind, and naive. He will not know what to do with her, the Emperor said, his voice sharp yet mocking. Let's see him struggle. Surely the human will be embarrassed, and so will she. Lyria's heart sank. The court treated her like a pawn, a decoration to be passed around for amusement. She had no power here. Even her own family saw her as an object of ridicule. But she did have one gift they could not take away: her mind, sharp and alert, trained to notice details and solve problems. Yet now that mind was clouded with anger and humiliation. The transport chamber opened and Lyria was escorted out. Across the station, Captain Hayes' ship was docked, gleaming under the station's lights. He had been briefed about a diplomatic meeting, but was unaware of the cruel joke waiting for him. When Lyria stepped aboard, dressed in ceremonial robes that shimmered like liquid silver, Ethan blinked in surprise. "Princess?" he said carefully. Lyria lifted her chin, her gaze steady yet tired. "Yes, I am Lyria," she replied, her voice calm but laced with restrained frustration. She had been trained all her life to speak with poise, even when her world felt like it was collapsing. Ethan noticed her tense posture, the way her hands trembled just slightly. He understood instinctively. This was no ordinary diplomatic encounter. He extended a hand, not in mockery but in genuine respect. "I'm Captain Ethan Hayes, welcome aboard." For a moment Lyria hesitated. This human, so small, so ordinary, treated her differently from the courtiers who had mocked her. His hand was steady, his eyes sincere. She took his hand, her grip firm despite herself. As the airlock closed behind them, the reality of her situation sank in. She was aboard a human ship, leaving her people behind, expected to play a role she had never chosen. Yet somewhere deep inside, a flicker of curiosity sparked. This human, unlike anyone she had met, might not see her as a burden. The ship's interior was simple, practical, and functional, a stark contrast to the ornate designs of the Zetherian Empire. Panels glowed with soft light, buttons and screens organized in logical patterns. Ethan led her through the corridors, explaining basic functions. "You'll have your own quarters here," he said, opening a door. The room was small but comfortable, furnished with a bed, a work desk, and a window showing the vast expanse of space. "It's not a palace, but it's safe." Lyria looked around. She had lived in halls that could hold 100 people, ceilings so high they disappeared into the lights. This room felt human, functional, practical, and strangely peaceful. She wondered if humans valued comfort over grandeur, or if they simply knew how to survive. Their first meal together was quiet. Ethan offered a simple human dish: bread, fruits, and roasted vegetables. Lyria hesitated but eventually ate. For the first time in years, she felt no pressure to impress anyone with etiquette or ceremony. Ethan watched her with a patient curiosity, never intrusive, always respectful. "This is different," she admitted quietly. "I am used to everything being a test, a performance. Here I feel allowed to be myself," Ethan smiled. "Good, you should feel that way. We humans like to solve problems, but we don't usually make people feel small for things beyond their control." A spark of something unfamiliar, Trust began to form. Lyria realized that in this human's presence, she did not have to hide her fear, anger, or sadness. She could simply exist and perhaps even grow. Days passed as the ship traveled through the glittering fields of star clusters. Lyria observed Ethan at work, marveling at his skills. He repaired machinery, calculated fuel consumption, and navigated asteroid belts with a calm confidence that spoke of experience and intelligence. She began to understand that humans, though physically weaker than many alien species, possessed a unique strength, a combination of ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. One evening, as the ship glided past a nebula, Lyria found herself in the observation deck. Colors of purple, blue, and gold swirled outside the window like liquid fire. Ethan joined her quietly, offering a soft drink. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, nodding toward the nebula. Lyria's eyes reflected the swirling lights. "It is. In my palace I have seen art, statues, crystal gardens. Yet nothing compares to this," Ethan shrugged. "We don't always have art like that, but we see the universe in our own way. You have to look closely and sometimes take risks to really understand it." Risk. The word struck her. She had spent her life avoiding danger, avoiding mistakes, avoiding disappointment. But here, with a human who welcomed challenges rather than feared them, the idea of risk felt exciting. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's alert system. A small vessel approached at high speed, refusing to identify itself. Ethan immediately moved to the controls. Pirates, scouts, could be anything. Lyria's instincts kicked in. Years of training in court politics, strategy, and observation came alive. She noted the vessel's trajectory, speed, and potential weak points. They are likely testing our shields first. If we divert power to the rear, we can avoid the initial blast. Ethan's eyes widened. He did not expect advice, yet here it was. Precise, logical, and actionable. "Good thinking," he said, activating her suggestions. The ship shuddered as energy redirected, and the small vessel sped past, unable to breach their defenses. For the first time, Lyria felt a thrill that was not tied to her royal title or her appearance. She was useful. She had value. She was not a joke. That night she lay in her quarters, staring at the stars. She thought of her people, her family, and the cruel joke that had sent her here. Yet she also thought of the human beside her, who saw her as more than her flaws or status. She realized something profound. Perhaps this forced journey was not only punishment, it was opportunity. In the quiet hum of the ship, Lyria allowed herself to imagine a future not dictated by shame, ridicule, or expectation. A future where she could be strong, intelligent, and capable. A future where she was seen for who she truly was. The first days of their journey had been awkward, tense, and sometimes painful. But they had also been enlightening. And Lyria knew one thing clearly. She was no longer a pawn. She had a choice. As the stars streaked past the observation deck, Lyria turned to Ethan, who was repairing a small console. "Captain, thank you for treating me like a person." Ethan glanced up, smiling softly. "You don't have to thank me, Princess. We all deserve respect. And besides, you're proving to be more useful than I ever imagined." Lyria allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps this human journey, begun as a cruel joke, could become the adventure of a lifetime. Somewhere deep in her heart, a flicker of hope began to grow. A hope that one day, she would prove not just to the court but to herself, that she was more than what anyone had ever said she could be. And with that thought, Lyria looked out at the stars, ready to face whatever the galaxy had in store. The human ship cut through the dark void of space like a silver arrow. Lyria had begun to feel more comfortable aboard, though every day brought new surprises. She watched Ethan with quiet fascination. The human's energy, determination, and calm under pressure were remarkable, and slowly she realized that life outside her palace, away from court politics and ridicule, felt alive. One morning, the ship's alarm blared, echoing through the corridors. Lyria leapt from her bunk, her heart pounding as Ethan rushed to the bridge. "What is it?" she asked, gripping the railing. "Unknown vessel approaching fast," Ethan replied, scanning the sensors. "No identification. They're moving too quickly to be a trading ship. Could be pirates, raiders, or worse." Lyria's mind, trained in strategy and observation, went immediately to work. She noticed patterns in the approaching ship's movements, subtle deviations that suggested it was testing their defenses. "They are scouting us," she said, voice steady. "Their first move will be to hit the shields. We can outmaneuver them if we act fast. Ethan glanced at her, impressed. You're good at this, he said. Let's see if your plan works. The ship shook as the attackers fired energy pulses, bright streaks cutting across the darkness. Ethan skillfully redirected power to the engines and shields, following Lyria's instructions. The pulses glanced off the ship's hull harmlessly, and the attackers' frustration became clear in their erratic movements. Now, Lyria shouted. Move left, full thrust. Ethan obeyed, and the ship darted through the void, narrowly avoiding the final blast. The attackers were forced to retreat. Both of them exhaled, hearts pounding, and Lyria felt a thrill she had never experienced in her palace life. You saved us, Ethan said, clapping her on the shoulder. I did not save anyone, Lyria corrected, a small smile forming. We did this together. The adrenaline faded and reality returned. The attack was a warning. Pirates or raiders might follow them. Lyria realized how vulnerable humans were in space, but she also saw their resilience. They did not rely on strength alone. They relied on intelligence, courage, and quick thinking. Over the next few days, the human ship traveled through asteroid fields and quiet star clusters. Lyria spent time learning more about human technology and culture. Ethan was patient, explaining things slowly and clearly. He treated her as an equal, asking her opinion, encouraging her curiosity. You adapt quickly, Ethan said one afternoon, as Lyria assisted in repairing a navigation array. Most humans would struggle with these alien systems. It is not just humans who struggle, Lyria replied. Aliens, humans. We all must adapt to survive, but survival requires observation, strategy, and courage. I have learned these things in my life, though not in ways you would expect. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. You're stronger than your court ever realized. And you're brave. Lyria's cheeks warmed. Compliments from humans were different, honest, not tied to politics or appearance. She had rarely heard such words in her own palace. As they traveled, they encountered a small colony of alien refugees trapped in a deteriorating sector. Their habitat was failing, supplies were low, and they had no way to escape. Lyria and Ethan agreed to help. Together they navigated debris fields, repaired failing life support, and coordinated evacuation. The colony's gratitude amazed Lyria. These beings, once strangers, looked at her and Ethan with hope. You are our saviors, one elder said, his eyes shining with tears. We thought no one would come. Lyria realized something profound. Her actions mattered beyond herself or her court. She could make a real difference. That night, as they rested on the ship, Lyria spoke softly to Ethan. In my palace, I was told I was worthless, that I had no purpose. But here, helping others, this feels meaningful. It feels right. Ethan nodded. Purpose isn't given by courts or titles. It comes from what you do and how you treat others. You're learning that quickly. Lyria looked at him, truly seeing the human for the first time. He was not perfect, far from it, but he had integrity, courage, and a heart willing to care for others. She wondered how she had underestimated humans for so long. Days turned into weeks. Lyria began to understand more about the human mind and spirit. Humans were not the strongest species physically, nor the most technologically advanced, but they were resourceful and resilient. They made mistakes, yes, but they learned from them. They acted out of curiosity, kindness, and sometimes stubborn hope. One evening, as they drifted near a glowing nebula, Ethan shared stories from his past. He spoke of daring missions, dangerous explorations, and moments of failure. Lyria listened, fascinated by his honesty and humility. Why do you keep risking your life? She asked. Wouldn't it be safer to stay in one place to avoid danger? Ethan laughed softly. Safe is boring. And if we don't take risks, we never discover anything new. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come from danger. Lyria reflected on those words. In her palace, safety had been a chain, not a comfort. Risks were punished, mistakes were shamed, and life was measured by appearances, not action. Here, risk meant growth, discovery, and life. Their growing trust was tested when another warning appeared on the sensors. A rogue asteroid was hurtling toward a nearby colony. Its size was massive, capable of destroying entire habitats. Lyria and Ethan had little time to act. Ethan turned to her. We need a plan fast. Lyria quickly assessed the situation. If we divert energy to the thrusters and strike at an angle, we can nudge it off course. But we need precision, human and alien calculations combined. Working together, they coordinated the maneuver. Lyria suggested a trajectory. Ethan adjusted the engines and the ship moved like a single organism through the void. The asteroid shifted slightly, then more, avoiding the colony entirely. Relief washed over them. "You're amazing," Ethan said breathlessly. "No," Lyria said, shaking her head. "We are amazing. Together." That night, Lyria sat alone in the observation deck thinking about the past weeks. She had traveled far from her palace, far from the judgment and mockery of her people. She had faced danger, uncertainty, and responsibility, and she had learned that she could survive and even thrive outside the palace walls. She also realized that humans were not inferior, as some in her court had claimed. Their strength lay in ingenuity, courage, and compassion. Ethan embodied all of these qualities. And though their worlds were different, their partnership felt natural, as though two halves of a problem-solving whole had found each other. For the first time in years, Lyria laughed genuinely. The sound surprised her, echoing softly through the empty corridors. The human beside her, who had once been a stranger, had become a friend, a teacher, and perhaps something more. The journey ahead remained uncertain. They would face more dangers: space pirates, hostile factions, and perhaps even the empire that had sent Lyria away as a joke. But for the first time, Lyria felt capable of facing them. She was no longer just a princess defined by her court's cruelty. She was a strategist, a protector, and a partner. As the ship glided past distant stars, Lyria made a silent promise to herself. She would not be a pawn. She would not be a joke. She would prove her worth through action, courage, and heart. And maybe, just maybe, she would discover that the human she traveled with was not just an ally, but someone who could change her life forever. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, a canvas of possibilities, and Lyria, once humiliated and uncertain, now felt the quiet thrill of freedom, the strength of newfound purpose, and the unshakable certainty that her life was just beginning. The human ship sailed steadily through the silent stars, but Lyria could not shake the unease growing in her chest. Every mile they traveled brought them closer to the Zytherian Empire, back to the place where her life had been a performance and her every move judged. The court that had mocked her, the officials who had made her a cruel joke, it was all waiting. And yet now she felt stronger, sharper, and more capable than ever before. Ethan noticed her tension. "You've been quiet," he said gently as he adjusted the ship's trajectory. "Thinking about home?" Lyria nodded. "Yes, but home is not what it used to be. My people expect me to fail, to return humiliated. I cannot let them see me weak." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then show them who you really are. You're more than they ever imagined." "I've seen it firsthand." The journey ahead was fraught with danger. Not just political danger, but the unpredictable hazards of space itself. Debris fields, rogue asteroids, and unpredictable cosmic storms could tear their ship apart. Lyria had learned to read these threats quickly, combining her royal training with Ethan's practical skills. Together they made a formidable team. As they approached the Empire, they were suddenly intercepted by a fleet of patrol ships. Zytherian markings glimmered in the darkness. The patrol commander hailed them immediately. "Princess Lyria, you are to return to the Empire at once," a stern voice commanded. "Your conduct aboard a human vessel is unacceptable." Lyria's heart raced. The court had already sent forces to assert control over her. She glanced at Ethan. "They do not know what they are dealing with," she said. "We must be careful," Ethan nodded. "We will follow protocol, but we will not let them intimidate us." They approached the main docking station, guided by the patrol fleet. As they entered the Empire's orbit, the enormity of what awaited Lyria became clear. Crowds of officials, advisors, and distant relatives watched from observation decks. Some faces were curious, some skeptical, and others openly hostile. Inside the imperial palace, the emperor sat upon a grand throne, flanked by advisors and military leaders. His expression was sharp, almost amused. "Princess," he said, voice echoing through the hall, "I hear you have been traveling with a human, performing tasks unworthy of your title. Explain yourself." Lyria stepped forward, her back straight, her voice steady. "I have traveled to learn, to help, and to survive. I have faced challenges and dangers, and I have acted with intelligence and courage. I have done what you expected me to fail at and more." The emperor raised an eyebrow. "Do you think words will change our opinion?" "They will," Lyria replied. "Because actions matter more than words. I have helped others solve problems and protected life. I have proven that worth is measured by what one can do, not by what others assume. Whispers swept through the hall. Courtiers exchanged shocked glances. The princess they had laughed at now stood confidently, her poise undeniable. But not everyone was pleased. Certain factions in the court feared Lyria's growing influence. They whispered to each other, plotting behind veiled smiles. She will expose us, one advisor muttered. We must act before she gains more support. Ethan, standing beside Lyria, observed silently. He could feel the tension thickening like a storm. Yet he also admired Lyria's courage. She was no longer a frightened girl. She was a leader in the making, and her mind was sharper than anyone in that court anticipated. In the midst of political tension, an unexpected problem arose. Scientists from Lyria's empire reported discovering an ancient relic deep within a hidden chamber. Legends claimed it could solve infertility among the royal line, a solution Lyria's court had dismissed as myth. Lyria's eyes widened. Could this be the answer her people had long sought, and the answer to her own heart's longing for purpose and family? But the relic's activation required precise calculations, cooperation between human and alien technologies, and a daring exploration into the ancient ruins where it lay. I can help, Lyria said. I know strategy, and Ethan can handle technical challenges. Together we can succeed where others might fail. The Emperor frowned. And if you fail? Then we will learn as humans do, Lyria replied, and we will continue trying. The court murmured. The Emperor's expression hardened, but even he could not hide the flicker of intrigue. That evening, Lyria and Ethan prepared for the expedition. The ruins were located on a desolate planet, full of jagged rocks, unpredictable weather, and ancient security systems. As they landed, the wind whipped around them, carrying a chill that cut through their suits. Stay alert, Ethan said. We don't know what protections the ancients left behind. Lyria nodded. Her instincts sharpened as they entered the ruins. The walls were etched with unknown symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. Ancient mechanisms hummed softly, responding to their presence. Lyria observed carefully, noting patterns in the symbols, recognizing sequences that could trigger or disable the traps. Hours passed, each step requiring caution, precision, and trust between the human and the alien princess. Ethan handled the technical operations, connecting alien devices to human instruments. Lyria guided him, translating the symbols and predicting potential dangers. At last they reached the inner chamber. In the center rested the relic, a crystalline structure radiating soft golden light. It seemed alive, as if it were aware of their presence. This is it, Lyria whispered. The relic of fertility. But before they could approach, the floor shifted beneath them. A security mechanism activated, sending beams of energy toward them. Ethan pulled Lyria aside, and she used her agility to dodge while guiding him toward the control panel. Together, they deciphered the mechanism, combining alien insight and human ingenuity. The beam stopped and the relic's glow intensified. Lyria stepped forward cautiously. This is a choice, Ethan said softly. We must be sure we understand its power before we use it. Lyria took a deep breath. She thought of her past. The ridicule, the humiliation, the fear that had followed her all her life. She also thought of the future, the possibility of hope, family, and meaningful contribution. We proceed, she said firmly. With careful coordination, they activated the relic. Light swirled around them, soft yet powerful, as if the universe itself was acknowledging their courage. Lyria felt a warmth spread through her, a sense of completion and a surge of energy unlike anything she had known. When the light dimmed, the relic was dormant, its work done. Lyria felt different, not only in body but in spirit. Hope now filled her, a promise of new beginnings. Returning to the Empire, Lyria's confidence radiated. She had faced political tension, physical danger, and ancient mysteries, and she had succeeded. The court could no longer dismiss her. She was no longer a princess defined by infertility or weakness. She was a survivor, a strategist, and a trailblazer. Yet the court's factions were not silenced. Some plotted to undermine her, fearing that her new status would upset the balance of power. Lyria understood that leadership was more than courage. It required vigilance, wisdom, and the ability to navigate treachery. That night, Lyria reflected in her quarters. She thought of the humans she had met, the courage she had discovered within herself, and the power of cooperation. Ethan had become more than a partner. He was a friend, a guide, and a witness to her transformation. Tomorrow she would face the court once more. She would demonstrate her intelligence, her courage, and the truth of her worth. And no matter the outcome, she knew she had already changed forever. The stars outside glimmered vast and infinite. Lyria allowed herself a rare smile. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, and full of challenges, but she would face it with courage. She had survived the void, the pirates, and the unknown. She could survive this too. And in the quiet hum of the Empire's palace, she made a promise to herself. She would not be a pawn. She would not be a joke. She would rise and she would lead, not for the court, but for herself and those she could help. The sun of SciFi-Prime rose slowly over the Imperial Palace, painting its towers with soft gold and rose light. Inside, the court was already buzzing with whispers. News had spread of Princess Lyria's return, her daring journey with a human, and the mysterious relic she had activated. Some spoke in awe, others in fear, but all eyes were on her. Lyria stood in the palace corridor, her silver hair flowing, her posture straight and confident. She was no longer the uncertain princess who had been sent away as a joke. She had changed, her mind sharper, her spirit stronger, and her heart full of determination. Beside her, Ethan walked silently, a calm presence amid the storm of attention. As they entered the throne room, the Emperor's gaze fell on them. "Princess Lyria," he said, his voice measured, "you have returned, and you have achieved what many thought impossible. Explain yourself." Lyria stepped forward, her voice steady and firm. "I have returned not to prove myself to you, but to demonstrate what courage, intelligence, and cooperation can achieve. I faced challenges that required more than status or wealth. I relied on strategy, trust, and understanding, and I succeeded," the court murmured. Some gasped, some whispered behind hands, and a few scowled. Lyria's confidence unsettled those who had always seen her as weak. "The relic," the Emperor said cautiously, "was activated. Does it truly work?" Lyria nodded. "Yes, it works. But it is not magic. It requires knowledge, precision, and the willingness to take responsibility. It is a tool, not a solution on its own. Those who seek power without understanding will fail." A hush fell over the hall. Her words carried authority. She was no longer a princess to be ridiculed. She was a leader, a strategist, and someone who had faced real danger and emerged victorious. Suddenly, an urgent alert came from the palace sensors. A neighboring empire had launched a surprise attack on the outskirts of SciFi-Prime. Ships streaked through the skies, lasers cutting through the atmosphere. Panic threatened to rise among the officials. Ethan stepped forward. "We need a plan, quickly." Lyria's mind raced. Years of royal training, combined with her recent experiences, allowed her to see patterns and predict enemy movements. She turned to the Emperor. "We can protect the city and repel the attackers, but we need coordination, strategy, and trust. Allow me to lead the defense team." The Emperor hesitated, then, seeing the confidence in her eyes, he nodded. "Do it. Show us what you can do." Lyria organized the defense swiftly. She assigned tasks, calculated trajectories, and coordinated with both human and alien technologies. Ethan handled the technical operations while Lyria guided the overall strategy. The attackers were intelligent, but they had not accounted for the cooperation and ingenuity of a human-alien team. The battle raged for hours. Lyria directed energy shields, diversion tactics, and counterattacks. She moved between control rooms, rallying teams, and predicting enemy maneuvers. Ethan adjusted systems and repaired damages mid-flight, following her precise guidance. Finally, the attackers were forced to retreat. SciFi-Prime was safe, and the court watched in astonishment. The princess who had been a joke had not only survived, but she had saved the Empire. The Emperor rose from his throne, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he nodded. "Princess Lyria, you have proven your worth beyond question, not just to me, but to the entire Empire." Lyria bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Father. I serve the Empire not for approval, but to protect it and its people. And I will continue to do so." Whispers spread through the hall. Officials who had plotted against her looked uneasy. Those who had doubted her now saw a new reality. Lyria was a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of courage and intelligence, and someone who embodied the values the Empire claimed to uphold. After the battle, Lyria returned to the relic chamber. She felt a mixture of anticipation and hope. The relic had activated once before, but she now understood its full potential. With Ethan's guidance, she carefully prepared to test its effects further. "This is it," Ethan said quietly. "Are you ready?" Lyria took a deep breath. "I am. I want to embrace life fully, and I want to create something meaningful. Let us proceed." The relic glowed once more, warm and radiant. Lyria felt energy flow through her body, a sense of completion and renewal. It was more than a physical change. It was a confirmation of her courage, her willingness to face uncertainty, and her determination to take responsibility for her future. When the process ended, Lyria felt a calm certainty. She had succeeded. The Empire, once dismissive, now saw her not as a fragile princess but as a capable leader, protector, and soon-to-be mother. The news spread quickly. Citizens of SciFi-Prime celebrated her courage and intelligence. Messages of respect and admiration reached the palace from neighboring sectors. Lyria's reputation transformed overnight, from a figure of ridicule to a symbol of hope and resilience. Even those who had plotted against her were forced to acknowledge her achievements. Some grudgingly respected her, while others quietly reconsidered their own positions. Lyria understood that true power was not in forcing others to obey, but in demonstrating competence, courage, and integrity. Days later, Lyria returned to her quarters. She looked at Ethan and smiled. "We did it together." Ethan returned the smile. "You did it. I just helped where I could. You were brilliant out there." Lyria felt warmth in her chest. This human who had once seemed so ordinary had become her partner, her ally, and her friend. She realized that life was richer when shared with someone who respected and supported you. Weeks passed. Lyria prepared to share her success with the Empire formally. She gave speeches, consulted with officials, and guided reforms. She emphasized collaboration, courage, and respect for all individuals, regardless of their origins or abilities. Finally, the moment arrived. Lyria stood before the council, the relic displayed behind her. With confidence and grace she spoke. "This relic is a symbol of possibility," she said. "It is not a miracle, but a tool for those willing to act responsibly, bravely, and wisely. It has shown me that worth is not determined by what others say, but by what we do, the risks we take, and the courage we show. From this day forward, I will work to ensure that no one is dismissed, ridiculed, or underestimated. Every life has value, every mind has potential, and every heart can achieve greatness." The council was silent. Then, one by one, officials began to nod, some with tears, others with awe. Lyria had not only proven her personal strength, but had inspired change, reform, and a new vision for the Empire. That evening, she and Ethan stood together on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, vast and full of promise. "What happens now?" Ethan asked. Lyria smiled softly. "Now, we build the future, one filled with courage, understanding, and new life. And we prove that even those who are underestimated can change the world." Ethan nodded. "I'm proud of you, and I'm honored to be part of this journey." Lyria looked at the stars, then back at him. "The journey is not over, but I know now that I can face whatever comes next. Not as a pawn, not as a joke, but as a leader, a protector, and soon, a mother." In the quiet glow of the star-filled sky, Lyria felt hope, strength, and purpose. She had triumphed over fear, doubt, and ridicule. She had shown that intelligence, courage, and compassion were the true measures of worth. And she knew that her life and the life she could now create would be filled with meaning, love, and endless possibilities. The Empire had witnessed her transformation. So had the galaxy, and Lyria, once laughed at as a fragile princess, now stood as a symbol of hope, courage, and the extraordinary power of the human-alien partnership. Her heart was full. The future was bright. And for the first time, Lyria believed that anything was possible. The palace of SciFi-Prime gleamed under the twin suns, reflecting the changes that had swept through the Empire. Lyria, once a princess mocked for her infertility, now walked the halls with quiet confidence. Her journey had transformed not only herself but also the Empire around her. Citizens whispered her name with admiration, young leaders sought her guidance, and even the skeptics in the court had come to respect her intelligence and courage. Beside her, Ethan Hayes moved with ease among the alien officials, earning polite nods and curious glances. He had become a symbol of cooperation between humans and aliens, a living proof that collaboration across species could bring remarkable results. He and Lyria often shared quiet smiles, each understanding the other without words. Their partnership had grown deeper, founded on trust, courage, and shared triumphs. Lyria's mind, however, was focused on the greatest change yet to come. The relic she had activated weeks ago had prepared her body and spirit for motherhood. Unlike the cruel rumors of her past, she now had a chance to create life, a gift not only for herself but for the Empire, a symbol of hope, unity, and possibility. The day finally arrived. In the serene chambers of the palace, Lyria gave birth to a child. The process was not only miraculous but also deeply emotional. She held the tiny life in her arms, a mixture of human resilience and Zetherian grace. The child's presence was a living testament to cooperation, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. Ethan knelt beside her, eyes shining with pride. "Lyria, she's perfect. Both of you are perfect." Lyria smiled softly, tears in her eyes. "Not just us," she said. "She represents all of us, humans, aliens, and the possibility that we can do more when we trust each other." News of the birth spread quickly. Crowds gathered outside the palace, cheering, celebrating, and expressing admiration. Officials who had once mocked Lyria now bowed in respect. For the first time, the princess was recognized not for her title or her appearance, but for her courage, intelligence, and compassion. The emperor, observing from his throne, rose slowly. "My daughter," he said, voice steady, "you have transformed not only yourself but the Empire. Today we celebrate new life, new hope, and the courage that made this possible." Lyria knelt before him, holding her child close. "Thank you, Father. I hope that my actions inspire the Empire to value strength, wisdom, and kindness above all else. Every being, every mind, every heart has potential." The Empire began to change almost immediately. Reforms were introduced to value merit over birthright, intelligence over appearance, and courage over fear. Programs encouraged collaboration between species, education for all, and recognition of individual achievements. Lyria's example became a guide for young leaders, a symbol of hope, and proof that adversity could be overcome through courage and ingenuity. Yet Lyria never forgot her journey. She often walked the palace corridors with Ethan and their child, sharing stories of distant stars, space adventures, and the lessons learned from their travels. She wanted the next generation to understand that life's value was not in titles or privileges, but in action, kindness, and the courage to face challenges. One day, as they strolled through the palace gardens, the child giggled at the sparkling fountains. Lyria watched with wonder, realizing that motherhood had brought a new depth to her life. The child represented the merging of worlds, the cooperation of species, and the boundless possibilities of courage and determination. Ethan bent down, whispering to the child, "You have the best mother in the galaxy, and someday you'll see the stars as we have and maybe even go further than we ever dreamed." Lyria smiled, feeling a deep warmth. "Yes," she said, "and she will know that being small, human, or underestimated does not matter. What matters is heart, mind, and courage." Weeks later, Lyria convened a council of leaders from across the Empire and nearby sectors. She shared her experiences, her strategies, and the lessons learned from cooperation with humans. Her words resonated across species and generations. They spoke of courage, ingenuity, and unity. Leaders who had once been skeptical were inspired. Young officials were eager to apply her teachings, and citizens began to see the value of every individual. Through it all, Ethan remained by her side. He helped her explain human ideas and approaches, offering perspectives that complemented her own. Together, they had become symbols of partnership, demonstrating that differences could be strengths when used with trust, respect, and courage. As the Empire grew stronger, Lyria's personal life flourished as well. She nurtured her child, teaching lessons of empathy, bravery, and curiosity. She shared stories of their space adventures, emphasizing the importance of learning, cooperation, and resilience. The child listened with bright, curious eyes, absorbing lessons that would one day guide her own actions. Months passed, and the Empire reached a new era. Conflict still existed, but the lessons of courage, cooperation, and intelligence now guided leaders more than arrogance, fear, or prejudice. Lyria's story became a legend, a tale told across sectors and species. The tale of a princess who had been dismissed, underestimated, and treated as a joke, but who returned stronger, wiser, and as a mother, inspiring generations to come. In private moments, Lyria and Ethan reflected on their journey. "I never imagined life could be like this," Lyria admitted one evening, gazing at the stars from the palace balcony. "From being a pawn in a joke to becoming a mother, leader, and symbol, life is more extraordinary than I ever dreamed." Ethan smiled. "It was not just luck. It was courage, determination, and the willingness to trust and act. You found strength you didn't know you had, and you inspired others to do the same." Lyria rested her hand on her child, who slept peacefully in the soft glow of the balcony lights. "And together we've shown that even the smallest, most underestimated beings can change the universe. Our child will grow knowing that courage, intelligence, and heart are the true measures of strength." As night fell over SCIFI-Prime, the stars sparkled brilliantly, mirroring the light in Lyria's heart. She thought of her journey, the humiliation, the challenges, the dangers, and the triumphs. Every experience had shaped her, teaching lessons of resilience, empathy, and leadership. And now, holding the child who represented both human ingenuity and Zetherian grace, she knew the future was bright. The Empire had witnessed the transformation of a princess. The galaxy had seen the power of partnership between humans and aliens. And Lyria, once dismissed as fragile, now stood as a living testament to courage, intelligence, and love. The palace quieted, the twin suns setting behind distant mountains, painting the sky with hues of gold and violet. Lyria whispered softly to her child, "The universe is vast and full of wonders, my little one. You will explore, learn, and grow, but always remember, heart, courage, and wisdom will guide you farther than strength or privilege ever could." Ethan took Lyria's hand, their fingers entwined. Together they looked out at the stars, imagining the adventures yet to come, the challenges they would face, and the legacy they were building. In that moment, Lyria understood fully. She had returned from humiliation and doubt not just as a mother but as a leader, a protector, and a symbol of what courage, ingenuity, and humanity could achieve. The Empire was no longer the same, and neither was she. And so a new era began. An era where respect was earned through action, strength was measured by courage and intellect, and life, human and alien alike, was celebrated for its potential, its creativity, and its unyielding spirit. Lyria, Ethan, and their child stood at the heart of this new era, a family that symbolized hope, unity, and the extraordinary power of determination and heart. The stars sparkled above, endless and inviting, and the galaxy awaited the next story, one that would be guided by courage, cooperation, and the unbreakable human spirit. And Lyria, once a princess given away as a cruel joke, now stood as proof that even the most underestimated could rise, thrive, and change the universe forever.